over millions of years, it forms a layer of mud up to 1 kilometer thick.
Greetings to everyone. Apologies, I can see it keeps on disconnecting, but I believe this time around it will work out. Tendani, can you please record the session for us? Ensure that you are in a place where there is a proper connection to avoid disconnection continuously. Greetings, Mr. Masutha.
Afternoon, my brother.
How are you, Mr. Masutha?
No, zero complaints. I hope I'm audible.
No, thanks. Yeah, you are audible. You are audible. Let's just give them 2 minutes to re-enter because I noticed there are a number of people that disconnected. Let's just give them 2 minutes. Then we'll be starting with our session. We are going to start at 7 past because we have already delayed the session, so we don't have your time. And then I just want to check if you are there and if you are able to record the session.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, Mr. Kanchi, I'm here and I have started recording me. We can continue as scheduled.
Okay, thank you so much, Tendani. Greetings again to everyone behind the screen. It's Ndibo Kanchi. I am the director of the company called Dormitory Family. It's an environmental consulting company that do the services such as environmental impact assessment, ecological studies, and other environmental related services. I was co-opted to host this meeting by Chairman, Ms. Tarifan Chitomrumoni. So I'm going to facilitate the first session, including question and answers that will be arising. Then later, our chairman will join us and take over the second session. So today we're going to have 2 speakers. Each will be allocated a minimum of 15 minutes up to 4 minutes. This is to allow the remaining 5 minutes for question and answers. So our first speaker is Mr. Masutha Meulenburg, who is going to lead us on a topic that he says youth positioning to harness economic opportunities in the South African economy. So without any waste of time, I would like to take this opportunity and introduce to you Mr. Masutha Meulenburg, who is from the Center for Emerging Researchers. So Mr. Masutha will be taking us through this topic, youth positioning to harness economic opportunities in South African economy. Mr. Masutha, I would like to welcome you to take over the platform. I thank you.
No, thanks. Thanks a lot. I hope I am. I hope I'm audible. Firstly, I just want to start by thanking everyone for being here and to thank your organization for your kind invitation. My name is Meulenburg Masutha. I am the head of research, innovation and advisory services at the Center for Emerging Researchers, which is based at the Johannesburg Business School, which is a relatively new business school of the University of Johannesburg. I also lecture higher education policy and management in the Faculty of Education at UJ, and then lastly, I temporarily teach urban geography and cities planning and development at VETS. And so my excitement about the topic today is both informed by my commitment to engaging with multiple stakeholders from all walks of analytical backgrounds, but also noting that it is when we speak more about our nation or our country that we are able to best leverage the opportunities before us. All right. Before we talk about, I think, the crux of our topic, which is, as the program director outlined, ways in which the youth of this country, and I would argue this continent, can make the most of the economy of South Africa. I think it's important that maybe we all mute so that our sound does not temporarily interfere with that of the program director or mine. This will also help our conversation to flow a bit faster. All right. Now, my point of departure is that since time immemorial, Africa, which is the continent within which our country belongs, has been at the center of global economic value chains. In other words, or put differently, there has never been a time in the history of mankind that the West, the East, the North, and the South did not need Africa to survive. And therefore, I want to start by arguing that for us to best leverage the African and the South African economy, we first have to have a firm grasp of the history of this continent, of this region, and ultimately of this country. This is absolutely crucial because if you do not have a firm history of the continent, you are likely to fall into the pitfalls of, I would say, pseudo arguments that, for example, frame Africans and African economies as subservient and sometimes even inferior to Western or Eastern economies. As I will outline later on when we speak about rare earth minerals, emerging alternative forms of energy, etc., it will become even more apparent that actually all non-Africans rely on the African continent and by extension South Africa for their very existence. And that has been the case since time immemorial. Now, without an appreciation of the centrality of Africa in the livelihoods and the well-being of other nations of the world, we are not able to price ourselves properly. And this is crucial. If I want to buy something from you, its price is determined by a number of things, but some of the most important dimensions of that pricing exercise is not only how hard you worked to put that particular product together. I also need to gain some form of economic intelligence about how much does this product mean to you. Let's give an example. A lot of Southern African nations, say Lesotho, are landlocked, which means they are in many ways dependent on the logistical routes that runs through South Africa into Lesotho and other neighboring countries. With this in mind, should South Africa find itself with water security issues and Lesotho having a competitive advantage in the water economy, it makes it possible then for both South Africa and Lesotho to sit around a trading table and leverage each other's strength in a manner that neither of the parties would feel robbed. However, one of these two countries can easily be robbed if that particular country does not understand what their product means to the other party. We can give this another example and use the oil-producing nations. Because of the boom in the automotive industries, oil-producing companies or countries rather immediately knew that the revolution around transportation means specifically combustion engines would mean that oil-producing countries have a lever or let's say an advantage over those countries that have adopted automobiles as a primary means of commuting without having oil deposits beneath their feet. And the sheer knowledge of that particular demand means that those countries with an added advantage are able to price their oil properly and sometimes even use their oil to leverage their competitive advantage even in other forms of trade negotiations. Now, I draw on those two examples to try and drive the point home that before we leverage the opportunities that are flowing from the South African and by extension the African economy, we have to know what is it that we have beneath our feet and above it? What is it that we have across the thousands of coastal lines that run across the South African economy as well as the continent as a whole? And what does that which we have mean to other economies around the world? We cannot understand that if we do not have a firm view of our history. Since time immemorial, as I stressed, prior to the slave trade, well into the colonial period, into the Cold War, and today's neoliberal capitalism, all these eras have been characterized by a plundering of the African economy, which means the first point, if the first answer to the question, how can young people leverage the South African economy in a way that guarantees a more secure, a more just, and a more human future, is that young Africans need to know their worth and the worth of their continent and by extension, their country, as I indicated. That's the first point. The second point is that if you do not have an idea of what you had and what was taken away from you, you start accepting definitions of freedom that do not sound nor taste free. This is again very crucial, because the second area where we can best leverage our economy is that of the knowledge economy. And the knowledge economy, I'm simply referring to, for example, how ideas flow from research and development into the factory floor, into the shelf, and into people's table. Now, without leveraging the knowledge economy, and to avoid using jargon, I just want to give you a much clearer example. If you use a Huawei phone, if you use a Samsung phone, if you drive a BMW or a VW or a Mercedes-Benz or a Kia or a Honda, the people who made those products, which I've just referred to now, not a single one of them were trained in English. Not a single one of them were trained in English. Now, let's pause there. Before we talk about the language or the medium of instruction under which they were trained, the people who made all those products didn't wake up one day and walked into a factory and start manufacturing a Honda, a Kia, a Samsung, or a Huawei. It all starts from massive investment into the knowledge economy, specifically research and development. What does this mean for young people here? Well, the first thing that it means is that we can no longer afford to end at bachelor's degree or at honors. We have to go into our masters, we have to get our doctorates, we have to then expand on our doctorates through postdoctoral activities, and we have to take that which we generate in the lab or that which we learn in our various postdoctoral journeys and translate them into ideas. And then from ideation, we have to translate them into products, goods and services that we're able to sell or render. Now, you cannot leverage your economy without taking advantage or making the most of the knowledge economy. Again, to avoid too much jargon, if you are not selling, somebody else is selling something to you. If you are not selling, someone else is manufacturing something for you. And if you are not manufacturing and someone is selling you something, it means whatever it is that you are earning, however limited it will be, it's guaranteed not to go the distance. Why is it guaranteed not to go the distance? Primarily because you do not have infinite resources. In other words, you have the same number of hours in a day that a South Korean has, that an American has, and that a Nigerian or a Ghanaian has, which means that if we're all utilizing the 24 hours that we have, and we're not investing them in manufacturing or making things to sell, then somebody is doing that for us, and by extension, we are buying from them. Okay. Now, I want to pause there and then get a bit closer to the South African economy. And I was asked, I was not given the profile of colleagues who will be participating in this session. And so what I did was to pitch this at a level of anyone. In other words, to pitch it in a manner that anyone, regardless of their walk of life, regardless of their level of education, will be in a way to understand where I'm coming from. So the first point that I want to touch on, or the first area of activity that I think South Africans or young South Africans can leverage the South African economy in a way that guarantees a much more just and more humane society. I keep using this word just and humane society. It's precisely because the top 3,500 South Africans have more money and wealth than the bottom 50% of the population. Okay. I'm saying I keep repeating those words because the top 10% of South Africans have more wealth than the bottom 90% of the country. I keep repeating the word just and equitable and more humane society because at the rate at which the South African economy is currently configured, it is neither desirable, sustainable, nor justifiable. So the status quo is unjustifiable, is undesirable, and of course, unsustainable. So when we say how can young South Africans leverage the South African economy, we mean how can young South Africans make this economy through changing patterns of ownership, control, and management, and through leveraging currently hidden and sometimes I would say, let's call colonized value chains. So through making the most of those value chains, we are able to make this economy not Masutha's economy, not Rendani's economy, but a much more just, a much more equitable, and a much more humane society. This is because if you look at the West since World War II, they established or they generated the greatest concentration of wealth in the upper 1 or 1% of their population. And the results of that particular concentration of wealth has been the concentration of power and the subversion of democratic principles and institutions. In other words, you cannot have meaningful and real democracy when the top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom, say, 50% of the country. And what you are seeing happening across Europe, whether you look at Germany, the Netherlands, you look at France with Le Pen, you look at Italy, there is what many people are referring to as the right-wing surge. These are people who blame migrants and weaponize migration as a scapegoating explanatory tool for why they are the most unequal society in the world. In reality, research shows that Europe is not unequal because of migrants, and America is not unequal because of migrants. It's a bit of a funny story to say America is unequal because of migrants, because America is literally composed of migrants from across the European continent, a bit of South America. Now, I'm saying that point before I delve into the anatomy of our economy to stress that if you do not redistribute the economy in a sustainable, in a just, and a more meaningful manner, you run the risk of producing the kind of right-wing politics that you're seeing across Europe, where people begin to kill each other and people begin to scapegoat each other. And migrants, as you know here at home as well, are often the first point of departure when it comes to scapegoating. In reality, the South African economy was the most unequal before the first Ghanaian landed here. And if every Ghanaian left tomorrow, the South African economy would still remain the most unequal one in the world. In other words, you need to be a bit more substantive if you are to deal with the question of the economy and not pander on mainstream narratives that are often not grounded in real evidence. All right. So with that background, where are the opportunities in my observation? The first category of opportunities can be found in the green technology and rare earth minerals economy. Now, I want to begin by explaining what I mean by this, because rare earth minerals are an essential component in the manufacturing industry, from high-tech products, smartphones, to electric vehicles, to the wind turbines that you find in wind farms, for example. And South Africa's rich deposits, including those in places such as Steenkamp mine, which is believed to have some of the highest concentration and the highest grades of rare earth minerals globally, present a massive opportunity for South African youth. And investing now in our capability to leverage the mining industry of those rare earth minerals, but specifically the processing of those rare earth minerals, would then position South African youth as a major player in the global supply chain of those rare earth minerals, not supplying the rare earth minerals, processing them locally, that's keeping the jobs here at home, and then producing goods and services that are able to be integrated in the global supply chain. So that's what I really mean. But the moment we start selling and people buy from us, not because they're doing us a favor, but because their economies cannot move without us, given how integrated the global economy is. So again, as a lecturer, I'm always wary of using unnecessary jargon. When I say that the other people's economy cannot move without us, I literally mean that if the Congo stops the exporting of cobalt out of the DRC, there will be no smartphones that you'll be holding on your hand. That's literally what I mean. I mean, there are rare earth minerals on the continent without whom the consumerist turn across the West, the North, and the East cannot move without us. And therefore, I'm starting at the point of rare earth minerals, and I'll explain why just shortly. It's unfortunate I'll have to run past some of these things because of of time. Now, it is only when we have a thriving industry that the processing of those raw materials that we have here to make process. But we are able to then make the most of what's beneath us and to serve global value chains while keeping the value here at home. I want to give an example of those rare earth minerals. Now, one of the, I would say, most popular form of rare earth minerals, and if you in this area, I pick it's found in your high quality camera lenses, your night vision goggles that are used in the military or in mines, your fiber optics. In manufacturing, it's found in your catalysts for petroleum refining, your polishing glass, and as well as ceramics. And in the automotive sector, you'll find this very same rare earth mineral in hybrid car batteries, so your EVs, catalytic converters, and so on. And in pharmaceuticals, there are possible applications in treatment that is dealing with, say, kidney disease and so on. Now, I've just mentioned one rare earth mineral, and I've tried to illustrate in my notes here that just one rare earth mineral can be found across multiple value chains. And the point behind that particular example is to illustrate that by highlighting the wealth that is beneath our feet, we are able to leverage that value, which is literally left for us by our ancestors, and begin to uplift living standards on this country and, of course, on the continent. Now, the second area that I wish to draw our attention to is the oceans and maritime economy. But before I go to the oceans and maritime economy, Program Director, when I'm left with at least 5 minutes, you must indicate so that I don't go over time, because we also don't want to take too much time during people's Tuesday afternoon. So when it's 5 minutes left, just say 5 minutes left, and then I will shorten my presentation. Now, let's put it this way before we go to the oceans and maritime economy. You cannot leverage the South African economy until you internalize the concept of nation formation and nation management. Nation formation and nation management are children of a concept called national interest articulation. Now, again, let's not let's move away from the jargon and try to explain it a bit. National interest articulation. So every nation has non-negotiable interests that it protects, come hell or high water. The first thing that any nation protects before you talk about an economy is your territorial integrity. Thanks, Program Director. Is your territorial integrity. Those are your borders and everything that's inside it. It's your national sovereignty. That is your ability to take decisions and take a direction for your economic direction, political direction, foreign policy direction without any form of interference. So national sovereignty, territorial integrity. 2 is your sustainable competitive advantage. The ability to leverage that which you have with which no one else has in the same quantity of volume as you, to be able to beneficiate and uplift living standards in your country. And then the sustainability of state institutions. Now, we can leave that for another day. The point being that your minerals are part of your territorial integrity. And it is when you are educating your population and skilling your population that you are able then to utilize those minerals to strengthen your economic security, your security as a whole, your social security, in order to protect the national sovereignty of the country, that is the ability of our country to take its decisions without anyone interfering or telling us which direction to go. And that is how you become self-sustaining, or you guarantee your existential continuum of the state. We can talk about it some other time in concept. So when you think of rare earth minerals, we're not talking about benefiting a few mine owners and so on. We're talking about literally leveraging the minerals to protect our ability to determine the direction of our country, and also to beneficiate in order to improve living standards from Limpopo to the Eastern Cape, etc. And the opportunities that are there are for you to leverage. So I imagine those of you who are in honors, you are supposed to do your master's research topics, your PhD research topics, your postdoctoral research projects. They need to be linked to guaranteeing the territorial integrity of the South African state as a whole. All right. I want to close with the oceans and maritime economy, because again, throughout the entire continent, you have I think somebody characterized it as oceans of opportunity and shores of despair. So you've got thousands of kilometers as identified in your Operation Pakisa here at home, thousands of kilometers of the coastal line with a wealth of opportunities, and absolute deprivation for communities that are living alongside that shore, let alone those who are in inland. And so if you take the development of aquaculture or maritime logistics as an example, we have an extensive coastline of untapped potential as a country. And we should be, well, I almost say we, because I'm no longer youth, I just turned 35, so I'm out of the bracket of youth. But if you are below 35, you stand a far greater chance of leveraging opportunities in the maritime and oceans economy. And investing in such things as a sustainable aquaculture or maritime infrastructure stands on top of other opportunities to reduce unemployment, to enhance food security, and of course, boost some of our exports to neighboring countries. You should be starting an ocean farm if you have to move to Durban or whatever, or you are in the Eastern Cape, it doesn't matter. There is no shortage of demand. I could go on and on. You have the opportunities of cross-border trade with neighboring countries, as I said, and then lastly, you've got the African Continental Free Trade Area. And here you are now able, with very minimal interference, to develop and manufacture products and export throughout the African continent. You can raise your goats. You can raise your goats in Venda, in the Eastern Cape, in KwaZulu-Natal, and find opportunities to export those goats, whether in whole or as meat or other value-added products such as cheese and so on. I will out of respect, I will say, if you are not organized for power, and if you are not power hungry, you are not hungry enough. Because if you do not organize yourselves as young people, someone else in Europe, I'll pause there because they say it's time up, but organize yourself for power because someone else is organizing around your powerlessness. Sure.
Sincere gratefulness for such an informative, eye-opening presentation by Mr. Meulenburg Masutha. First and foremost, thank you for simplification of the jargons for some of us to easily follow the presentation. In respect of time, I will open the platform for questions and answers. I will only take 5 questions so that we create enough time for the next speaker. It's question time. You can show by a raise hand button, then I will recognize you. Z, I can see your hand is up. The platform is yours.
Can you hear me?
You're audible.
Okay. To the speaker, thank you for all the information. I'm on the West Coast, basically, so that would be Saldanha. So I'm aware that even in Saldanha, they're looking at seafood and seaweed farming. And when you were talking about the aquaculture and the aquaculture farming stuff, I'm very, very interested in that because I'm busy applying for a farm. So obviously, is there any way that we can continue, seeing that you didn't have any more time, to still contact you after this? I find the information and the topic so interesting because people do not see the value within that sector. And at my age, I told myself, there's no way that I can fail at anything anymore. I don't have time. So I have to make a success. But I see myself becoming a seaweed farmer within the next couple of years or months or whatever. So thank you for that information and also pointing out the importance of that sector and what maritime studies, for instance, and the sector I'm looking at Operation Pakisa can still do for our economy. So thank you.
Mr. Masutha, I want to check if you are comfortable sharing your contacts because it seems like people still want to hear more about the today's topic. So if you don't mind, I'll give you a platform to just quickly share with people, those who need your contacts. Then Valencia, I noticed you will be the next after Mr. Masutha.
Yeah, so I have shared 2 emails on the chat box. As you know, I am an academic at UJ, so I've put my UJ email there, but I've also put my the email for the Center for Emerging Researchers, where I'm the head of research, and so I've put both emails there. You can contact me about anything, and if you want more details, you can read up a bit on the Center for Emerging Researchers or UJ, specifically the Faculty of Science. I'm a senior research fellow in the Department of Geography, Environmental Management and Energy Studies. So you can you can use the UJ email for that, but you can use anyone you want. It doesn't matter.
Thank you, Mr. Masutha. Valencia.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Masutha, thank you so much for, I have noted, organize yourself for power, because if not, somebody else is organizing themselves against your powerlessness. I'm one person that actually believe in development, and I've realized that you are the same because you are a lecturer yourself. So I just wanted to find out the possibility in terms of giving guidance and advice and motivation in terms of what to do and what not. The possibilities of making opportunities available in terms of having to say somebody identify the land. How do people come in as a team to assist in terms of accessing that particular land? One. The other thing in terms of trying to come up with something like development of the youth around the same spectrum in terms of let them realize the importance of believing into the green economy. So I believe that sometimes it is important that you have a way of opening your South Africans' eyes, and that can only be done through motivation, mentoring, coaching, and development, and maybe trying to say, we are saying this, but we have a way in which we can be able to assist. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I will take the last hand because I can see we have already prolonged. To Dr. Masutha, kindly accept my sincere apology. As indicated in the beginning, I was co-opted to take over the session, so I didn't get enough time to look at the titles on the poster. I am only noting it now that it's a Dr. Masutha. So I hope you find it in your heart to accept my apology. Let me take the last hand.
Meulenburg is fine. Meulenburg is absolutely fine.
Okay, don't worry. I'm taking Keifas Mukwebo. It will be our last so that we move to the next. We have prolonged enough. Mr. Mukwebo, it's your turn.
Thanks very much, Chair. And sincere appreciation to Dr. Masutha or Meulenburg, as he just said now. But otherwise, I think one should really appreciate the comprehensive presentation given and a thought-provoking one. And I just want one first, if maybe you will correct me if I'm wrong with this conclusion that Meulenburg, you are really sending us to academia so that we can start to harness the opportunities that lies within our country. I say that because the large part of your presentation speak most of research, or rather to say that we need to be equipped in terms of research and or academics. So I really want to get correction if one really needs to further our studies so that we can harness the opportunities that are within our country. Number two, I wanted to check with you based on the few opportunities that you had an opportunity to share with us in terms of the of the legislative framework currently. Does it allow us young people to can easily tap into these opportunities? And I say that especially to say, should one not be at a point where in is within the academic field where in you can go on and be able to get to a point where in your work gets to harness the opportunities, where one is just a rural boy who does not have an opportunity to go into academia, but is situated within the Pondal and in the Eastern Cape, where in it's just within the ocean economy, or where there's vast opportunities within the ocean economy. Does the country's legal framework has the elements of empowering, or has the elements of where one can easily tap into these economies and easily move, or are we still at the point where in we have the gatekeeping in terms of the legislative framework? I wanted to ask that, and I think if we can have an opportunity to have more of these discussions, we can still brief more. But otherwise, I think really one who really want to know as to, with the opportunities you shared, do we have, is our legal framework enabling the young people in the country to can easily tap, and tomorrow you have got a 20-year-old boy from PPD is importing goods, for an example, as an example that you give. So from my side, those were two issues that I wanted to raise from the presentation. Thanks very much.
Meulenburg, can you please just summarize in a minute?
Sure, no problem. I'll start at the end then. First, just to thank you guys for inviting me. I will stay on for the next presentation, so I'll still be around to engage. One is that the legislative framework is mostly pathetic. I mean, it's outdated. It's completely undermining small businesses. I'll give you an example. A government can incubate a furniture making SMMEs at something called Fentech, which is part of CEDA, but they are not allowed by law to go and buy all the student desks or school desks from that furniture manufacturing incubation, which is owned by government. They'll still be, buying imported cheap stuff. So the legislation, you cannot support small businesses in the poultry industry and still flood South Africa with American and Brazilian chicken. So the legislation it's actually undermining everything we're talking about. So there's room. That's why I was talking about organizing yourself for power, because legislation is not cast on stone. It is amendable, and you must fight to amend certain laws that are really undermining efforts to beneficiate the South African economy. Otherwise, we will just be talking on an annual basis. You have to change the laws, and that's the only way you can change the law is by organizing yourself for power, holding your MPs accountable, getting your leaders to know where you stand, and using the power of the youth. I mean, the oxygen of all politicians is called youth. You can decide whether they breathe or not breathe. But if you don't know that, and if you're not organized to be able to do that, then it becomes very challenging. From our sister from the Saldanha Bay, that is a massive, massive industry and an untapped potential, particularly in the Western Cape. And I really wish you all the best. I think I've left my details there, so should you wish to inquire about anything, please write to me, and I will be in a position to respond in the best way. I do advise government, including the South African National Defense Force, who are trying to support entrepreneurs through a national service program that should be announced soon. And they're trying to support entrepreneurs and young industrialists like yourselves. So you should watch out for that. Motivation, absolutely. Zia cannot stress that enough. If we do not have a continuity of thought with those who are in grade 6, then it will be a few elite who enter university who know about these opportunities, and then once they've made it and they've made it for them, their families, and individual self, then others start from scratch. But I think mentorship is about passing on a pipeline of opportunities. That one doesn't have to guess. You don't have to guess, but it's actually written in black and white. So I pause there for now, and thank you for inviting me. Thank you for the opportunity. And yeah, those of you who are interested, as you said, in postgraduate studies, just go to imagingresearchers.org. We are based at UJ, but work with imaging researchers across the continent, and you can join through the website and so on. Yeah, so it's open for everyone, regardless of your age, for that matter.
Thank you so much, Meulenburg. We are still looking forward to hosting you again. We really appreciate the wonderful presentation. As indicated in the beginning, Chairman was supposed to take over the second session, but due to poor reception, the Chairman will not be able to take over. However, I will proceed to the next session. Guys, as we are organizing ourselves for power, I will be welcoming Elef Meulenburg from Riza Holdings, who will be sharing with us about the role of NGOs in the South African economy. So, Elef Meulenburg, I am opening this platform for you to give us your presentation. I thank you.
Thank you, Program Director. I need to make apologies immediately that I'm going to have to cut my presentation short. My meeting invites at an hour, and I unfortunately have commitments not close after 5, so I'm going to have a very, very short presentation because of that. But other than that, I'll try to give a relevant message around what the position of NGOs in the South African economy is. And I will say this from one of my enterprises, which is Fundraising for Impact. I will start by giving an overview about who I am, and thanking the previous speaker for a most informative talk. And I think we need to applaud young academics and young academic professors or lecturers when it comes to their effort of providing information, because information in the end of the day leads to power and leads to economic growth. So about me, firstly, I would like to say that I'm a husband and father. I often jokingly say that I have a preschool of 2 at home, which are my children. One is 5 and one is 1.5, just over 1.5. They keep us very busy in the afternoons and evenings and weekends. That also give a real sense of purpose. Speaking of purpose, I'm a purpose-driven entrepreneur. My background is my first degree. I graduated, and I think that's, again, where the South African system sometimes fails us. I'm not from South Africa, I'm from the Netherlands originally, and I graduated for my first degree when I was 19, just turned 19, started my career as a teacher, high school teacher at that particular age. I'm currently doing my PhD. My first degree was in economics, and my second degree is in philosophy. So I'm doing my PhD in philosophy at the moment. What am I passionate about? Am I passionate about fundraising and holistic, inclusive economic development for South Africa particularly, but for Africa as a continent? Mainly active in Ghana, Uganda, Rwanda, Kenya, South Africa, and have done some work in Mozambique. Also the author of a book, which is called The Overcomers. The Overcomers is a book based on the looting that happened in 2021. We profiled 10 entrepreneurs that had been looted during that particular time, and wrote their stories and how they overcame the looting, and a lesson that can be learned from each of them. It's available everywhere, still exclusive books and online if you're interested in such. It's a nice, was wonderful to write, not read, I couldn't judge about that, but it was wonderful to write because hearing people's stories for me always brings understanding, and understanding can lead to building bridges. Then to the topic of today, what is the position of NGOs in the South African economy? And I highlighted 6 areas in which I think NGOs can be particularly relevant. The first area for me is addressing disaster relief. So why I say this is particularly around things like the looting that happened. So it can be human disasters or natural disasters, but also the flooding that happened in KZN, and how NGOs can immediately step in and address these kind of emergency relief situations, even during COVID, when NGOs took the forefront and provided services that civil society should service, and that government often is too slow to address, and where corporate is just not their priority. They can fund it, but they're normally not the one to actually implement it. Then, in most African countries, this is the case, and I think throughout the world this is often the case too, is that there's a shortage of quality socioeconomic services. So I think here it's around education, around healthcare, around things like skills development training, about gender-based violence, addressing those kind of issues. So NGOs are typically really good in providing those type of services, in supplementing what government does, often at a better cost, because government budgets in these departments are massive, but NGOs provide significant input into these services with very limited budgets. The third component when it comes to this is piloting potential social entrepreneurial services. So why am I saying this? Is that I think that the NGOs, the role of NGOs is changing slowly, where in the past, NGOs were really focused on just providing charitable services. Currently, I think it's more and more hybrid, where in South Africa, again, as to the previous speaker, the legislation is a little bit behind. But if you look at Rwanda, for example, Rwanda actually has a legal entity that is a social enterprise. South Africa doesn't have that yet. So social entrepreneurial services are, in my opinion, for-profit services with a people or planet output. So that, for me, piloting those type of services that could potentially become commercial. I think NGOs have a really, really important role to play with that. I'm going to keep this slide relatively theoretical, and then I'll dive into some more practical examples of what this looks like in the next slides. The fourth point of what the position of NGOs in the South African economy can be is to actually look after people and planet. So NGOs have their own agenda, which is twofold. On the one hand, they need to raise sufficient funds to keep themselves and their programs running. At the other hand, they need to provide evidence of making impact. Because of the second, they're often more accountable than government would be. And they don't have but at the same time, they don't have the financial returns expected from them by shareholders, right? So they are in a unique position to look after people and planet, both when it comes to exploitation of people and exploitation of planet. The fifth point is advocating for policy change. So previous speaker alluded to this, that policies are not always conducive for growth and for local economic growth in South Africa. And therefore, civil society is in a unique position to advocate for change around that, because they often are in communication with research institutions and are able to leverage their own influence in order to make change. And the same applies to point 6, which is addressing injustice of any kind. So that can be in relation to injustices around economic exploitation. This can be in line with policy injustices. This can be in line with gender-based violence kind of issues. So NGOs, again, for me, are in the right position to address these kind of issues. Sorry again to go through this so quickly. I'm just mindful of time and I don't want to cut it too short. So where does that leave us when it comes to, if those are the positions that the NGOs can play, where does that leave us when it comes to methodology? So there's been one particular methodology that I find particularly interesting, and that is called market creating innovations. And market creating innovations is developed by the late Harvard Business School professor called Clayton Christensen, together with Efosa Ojomo from Nigeria. And they came up with the following concept, and that concept says that market creating innovations transform complicated and expensive products into products that are simple and affordable, making them accessible to a whole new segment of people for whom there was always underlying demand, but no adequate solution on the market. So this is essentially what it looks like, and I'm going to use primary healthcare as an example. So if I look again, looking at the inequalities and inequities and injustices in South Africa, which have been adequately explained by the previous speaker, if we look at market A in the primary healthcare space, you look at suburban general practitioners, GPs, or medical doctors. If I go to a medical doctor, which is covered by medical aid, in Sandton, Rosebank, Parkhurst, any of the more Dainford, any suburban, higher income class suburban geographic location, the cost of that service would be approximately 700 to 1,000 rand, excluding to medication. So this is unaffordable to the vast majority of the population in South Africa. Then if I take that same general practitioner and place him in inner city Randburg or in town, CBD, Joburg CBD, then that person would not be able to charge the same prices purely by changing the geographical location, not by any technological innovation or something like that. That GP would only be able to charge 500 to 700 rand, excluding medication. Still, the majority of the population is not able to afford this. What is the alternative that people currently have? The alternative is actually market D, which is not highlighted in this picture. But market D in this case is government facilities. So government facilities, when it comes to primary healthcare, have issues. So they have long waiting lines. They often don't treat foreigners the same as South Africans. They often run out of stock. The quality of service is less than desired in many cases. So a lot of people would not per se want to go to those facilities, but are now forced to go to those facilities. However, if you then create a new market, which in this case would be market C, you can change that in a primary healthcare setting by simply replacing the general practitioner with a nurse. A nurse is much cheaper than a general practitioner, and therefore the cost of service is much more affordable. So I can now take the 1,000 rand cost of market A and make that into a 200 rand cost in market C. And for me, that's where NGOs can play a role in coming up with solutions that fit our product, where the product fit for the market and the affordability component of the market is taken into consideration without losing the quality of the service. And essentially what it does is then makes products simpler and more affordable, so more people in society can use them. So taking that into consideration, I want to use some examples. So the first example I want to use, sorry, I hear someone is not muted, if someone can just mute. The first example I want to use is Close the Gap. We're a local shareholder in Close the Gap in South Africa. What Close the Gap does, essentially, it upcycles IT waste. So it gets IT equipment from corporations, like from banks, insurance companies, and stuff like that. It then gets them into a factory where they're tested and where then machines and phones and tablets that can still be fixed, that are then subsequently fixed and sold to civil society or to small businesses. And what they essentially have done is that they've created a market when it comes to IT infrastructure, where people who previously did not have access to that infrastructure due to the cost of IT now have access to that while creating jobs, right? So instead of sending those computers overseas to be fixed or refurbished or recycled or completely destroyed, now they're keeping jobs in the current economy. And so this, I think, is an example of how market-creating innovation can be done and how NGOs can play a role in increasing local economic development. The second one is Munching Mongoose. Again, I'm choosing two examples where we have shareholding in. We are the majority shareholder in Munching Mongoose. But Munching Mongoose, essentially, from a green economy perspective, buys produce from agripreneurs. What are agripreneurs? Agripreneurs are people who are trained in agriculture and entrepreneurship and have been allocated a plot of land. So this has been piloted in Diepsloot, in Gauteng, in Orange Farm, in Gauteng, in Philippi, in Cape Town. And I know that something like this is for the Saldanha lady has been done at the Yes Hub in Saldanha as well in the past, with different success factors. So some have been successful and others have not. But with Munching Mongoose, we buy organic food from those type of entrepreneurs, and then we sell those products to households, mainly suburban households who can pay the prices that we want them to pay for these products. Again, what do we do here? We provide access to a market for agricultural entrepreneurs, smallholder farmers that did not have access to that market before, by creating a platform where people can buy from Munching Mongoose in this case. So I use these two examples. Why? Because on the one hand, they use some innovation. Sometimes it's technology, sometimes it's hardware, sometimes it's software, sometimes it's process innovation in order to provide access where access was not there before. But at the same time, it creates jobs. Market-creating innovations always create jobs. And for me, that's what we need in the South African context, right? With the current youth unemployment levels, with the current general unemployment levels, and the downturn in well, not the downturn, but the lack of growth when it comes to the local economy. So, using ourselves as an example, I run an NGO called Riza, which I started in 2009 in the Amazon jungle and started in 2011 in South Africa. We use the following when it comes to positioning that, and it leads also to sustainable funding and it leads to economic growth. So we have a trust that has PE shareholding in a number of businesses, among which that's Munching Mongoose and Close the Gap. And we also have a bunch of P2Is that feed into that. They provide us with dividends and with profit share. And we have a nonprofit organization. That nonprofit organization is the only beneficiary of the trust and therefore receives income streams from the trust, which reduces its reliance on external fundraising and donor contributions. Again, the only reason I put this slide in is just to give some examples of how NGOs can be innovative around income streams so that their positioning in the market can be more sustainable. And like I said, I was going to go through this in speed train or F16 speed in order to just be able to answer some questions before I have to go offline. So that's the end of my presentation for today. I hope it provided some insight as to how NGOs can be positioned in the South African economy, and if you run an NGO, how you can be relevant in years to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elef, for such a wonderful presentation. I just want to check if you have 5 minutes to just take some few questions before you leave.
That's fine.
I understand you had some commitment. Okay, I'm opening the floor for questions. I noticed 2 hands. I will start with Sanelisiwe Precious Mia, then Z and Mukona. Sanelisiwe, it's your turn.
Thank you, Treeman. Thank you, Elef, for the presentation. I just wanted to know whether Munching Mongoose is operational in KZN or only based in Gauteng.
So yeah, we're not yet in the KZN. So we're based in Gauteng in the Western Cape. KZN would be naturally our third kind of geographical location. So yeah, we're not there yet, but we should probably go there in the next 6 to 12 months.
6 to 12 months. And how much land would you be wanting these agripreneurs to have in order for you to start supporting them? What if someone is able to produce a high volume of something, but with not that much land? Like, for example, you know how easy it is to produce like a whole lot of herbs like parsley on a small plot.
Yeah, so those are the type of farmers that we normally buy from. So that for us is ideal. So if there's no land available, so what we've done in Diepsloot and Orange Farm, we have actually bought the land. So we bought about 8 to 10 hectares, and then they allocated plots to different agripreneurs who we then trained. We have accreditation with the AgriCETA. We then trained in NGO level 4, then allocated a plot of land and told them, if you produce A, B, C, and D, then we will buy from you. So we know exactly what our customers buy from a Munching Mongoose perspective. So we can then also tell the agripreneurs as to, if you farm this, then there's a very high likelihood that we'll buy from you.
Okay. I would like to extend this conversation beyond this here now, because I not only have the land that I am currently on, so this is urban land, but I still do farm here, right? Not commercially, but I'm able to basically do garden to table on a daily basis. But at the same time, I do own land in a rural space that I will explain later what my vision is, but yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm happy to provide my contacts, so you can reach me on the email address I'll provide in the chat.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Elef, you can share your contacts on the chat box. Then I will take, there is Valencia. I saw Mukona, but her hand is no longer up. I don't know if her question was answered, but if not, then Mukona, it's your turn, then we'll take Valencia, then we'll be closing.
Thanks once again. I'm sorry that I'm tempted to ask another question, but actually it's not a question, it's just appreciate the speaker. The role of NGOs in SA economy. And he has really mentioned a very serious issues in terms of your gender-based violence, which is exactly what one is interested in. So I would also like to speak like the lady who just spoke, to say, I believe that this conversation, I would rather love to extend this conversation, because what we're doing as NPO as well, when you look into the social ills that you've just talked about, the gender-based violence, and that speaks to then your drugs, and thereafter how one goes to as far as making sure that you are cleaning all these kids. That is where now your skills development, and including your land, whereby now agriculture is then involved, because then one wouldn't want to just rehabilitate them and restore them without necessarily giving them a solution. So there's a lot that one would really love to engage with, because as you have noticed, I'm the national spokesperson of all the NPOs, the Alliance of NPOs network. So there's a serious issue that I would really like to speak to you about, because now you have talked about our role as an NPOs, but when you look into the opportunities, the fairness that is happening in terms of us wanting to literally respond and be able to assist government, it is really not coming to party. So I would just love to request you as a team, have a way. I'm one person that believe in solutions because of the fact that you have seen, I'm saying the same thing that I've just said to Doctor who just spoke in the first thing. For the mere fact that you are seeing that there is a need and there is an opening gap, I would love that you should be able to come up with a solution because there's a total gap that is happening so that you assist them the implementation of what we're talking about. So I would literally really love to get your email address, your contact details, because one is dealing with the whole NPOs in the whole South Africa. So let me not go there and there and there. So there's a lot that one would really love to say that is really, really unfair. That is, would love to, as NPOs, be able to understand our position and be able to make sure that we implement and assist. But unfortunately, there's a total limitation. So I would love to really request and request you guys to join hands with us and see how we can be able to extend, because at the moment we are even in the position of even trying to see how we can be able to create job opportunities. But most of the NPOs, especially after the disaster called COVID-19, the load shedding and all that, most of them closed shops because of human resources, because of facilities, because of so many things that one can mention. So hence I'm saying I'm one person that rather concentrate on the solution. So, but then it is not going to be covered over here. Thank you so much. I'm crazy about the GBV that you just spoke about. Yeah, can I just drop it here? I really need to have your contact details, your email address, and I would like to thank you as a team for what you have just brought together. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks, Valencia. My email is in the chat box.
Thank you. We are going to take one last Z, just 1 minute to wrap up. Then after, I will call upon our chairman to come and give the closing remark. Z, just 1 minute.
Thank you. Elef, as you can see, I don't have a lot of time, but the previous speaker touched on a lot of things that I wanted to say. And yes, I am in Sudan. I'm actually in Meulenburg, so I'm very near to the Yes Hub. But looking at the NGO space and what has been happening in Sudan, everybody is aware that we've just lost a child, and we're still looking for Jocelyn Smith. That story has been all over the news. So it has put Sudan in the spotlight. I'm the chairperson for Black Women in Sustainable Business. It's an organization concentrating, and it was started in COVID. Only business people. We all business people, basically. And I was tasked actually, and I was busy doing that today, putting a proposal together, because I have to start a formation, an association of 500 business people only for the West Coast. So yes, I'm going to need your help. But also looking at what you have mentioned, I've been 2 years ago, I was part of PFP. I think you would know, Partners for Possibility. And that would bring in your school principals with business people, basically. And then you think that you're bringing something to the table as a business person, but then you find out it's the principals that's actually doing most of the work that we are too scared to do. There's a huge imbalance, basically, that we can add. And looking at COVID, like the previous speaker mentioned, if you look at those students that was in school, in matric, in the COVID period, it's a lost generation, and it's something that we need to zone in. And particularly the two options of projects that you mentioned, that is what I would like to discuss with you. Thank you so much. Thank you to whoever organized this meeting today. It is so valuable. Thank you so much.
Thanks, C. Yeah, happy for you to send me an email. Thank you for the question. The comment really helpful. Familiar with Saldana, I've been there many times, so understand the landscape a bit as well. So happy for you to send me an email. We can take it from there. Program director, I do have to jump off, as highlighted, but thank you for the invite, and I really appreciate you guys, and for all you guys coming through this platform, and the wonderful talk by the previous speaker as well.
Thank you so much, Elef. Thank you so much, Elef, for giving us this wonderful presentation. All the best, all the best. Without any waste of time, Chairman, in respect of time, I'm going to give you a platform to just give closing remark. As I'm concluding, I want to appreciate everyone for making it easier for me to facilitate this meeting by joining in numbers. I really appreciate your attendance. Chairman, I'm giving you this platform to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. DrMukovhe. I really appreciate the work that you've put together in facilitating this session. I think I must first apologize to the team and the speakers for not making it. I had to quickly move from Gauteng to Cape Town. There is a conference, Global Entrepreneurship Conference, that has been organized by 22 Loan and the Department of Social Development and other partners. So we have been invited, last minute invite. So that's why we couldn't make it to the session today. But we want to respect all of you who attended this session, particularly our speakers, Dr. Masutha, who gave a very nice analysis of where we are today and what are the opportunities that young people can tap into. I really want to put that forward to say, as young people, we need to take the space and be able to contribute in the mainstream economy, but also in shaping the policy of this country. We want to also thank you, Elef, for making your time. I definitely understand that you are quite a busy man, but having you here in this session made it very easy for people who are running NPOs to understand models that are viable, but also the opportunities that they can tap into based on the availability of spaces that are opening. Colleagues, everyone who attended, participants, and those who asked questions, we really want to thank you for putting effort, but also listening attentively to our speakers so that we contribute. We want to further advise that when we host this session, let's have more attendance, let's have more young people, but also let's contribute in terms of sharing ideas. The reason we have created this platform is just entirely to create space for us to engage as young people, but also to provide direction, because we have been led for the longest time by our elders, which is a good thing. But I think it's time now that as young people, we take the forefront and lead in terms of providing solutions. I want to inform you that we are still going to have more sessions like this. We will be announcing very soon the next session, where we'll be talking about different topics. But what is important is we want to continue these sessions outside this platform, where we have space to engage in your different areas. Please continue this engagement, but also put actions to it. Opportunities that have been presented here are for you as young people of this country to then take forward and put efforts to it so that you can then create your own enterprise, but also you can sustain yourself. I want to wish everyone in this meeting all the best, but also wish our facilitator very well, who handled this session very maturely. And we want to then congratulate everyone who participated in this session. Thank you so much, facilitator.
Thank you so much, Chairman. I am now formally closing this meeting. All the best, everyone. Thank you.